Elegy Written in a Country Churchyard by Thomas Gray. Themes, Structure, Summary, Analysis. Hello and welcome to the discourse. Elegy Written in a Country Churchyard was published in 1751. It is a contemplative, thought-provoking poem written by Thomas Gray that he completed in 1750. It is an elegy that mourns the death of the people of the village who lie buried in a country churchyard. Elegy Written in a Country Churchyard is among the most important and influential elegies ever written, and among the most well-regarded poems written in 18th century England. In this poem, Thomas Gray didn't talk about some rich, famous person. Rather, he contemplated the lives and deaths of the lower class farmers. They were insignificant and more humble compared to the people of the privileged sections of society. The tone of the poem is mournful, melancholic, and thoughtful. The poet says that after death, even the privileged lie under the earth in the same way the poor and ordinary people do. The poor died unsung, unhonored, and unwept. Had they been given the privilege, they would have achieved something with their talents that remained undiscovered. In the end, the poet says that one day the poet too will die and be buried in the same graveyard, and the epitaph that he wrote for himself would be inscribed on his tomb. It is the poem that established Thomas Gray as one of the famous graveyard poets of the 18th century. Structure of Elegy Written in a Country Churchyard. Elegy Written in a Country Churchyard is written in heroic quatrains. A quatrain is a four-line stanza. Heroic quatrains rhyme in an ABAB pattern and are written in iambic pentameter. An iamb is a poetic foot consisting of one unstressed and one stressed syllable, as in the phrase "the world." Pentameter simply means that there are 5 feet in each line. In each stanza, the first line rhymes with the third and the second line rhymes with the fourth, ABAB. The poem has 32 heroic quatrains or 128 lines. Gray frequently used inversion, reversal of normal word order, for poetic effect. For example, line 6, and all the air a solemn stillness holds, all the air holds a solemn stillness. The poet also made use of syncope while omitting letters or sounds in a word used in the poem, for example, over, glimmering, tower, twittering, etc. Gray also used alliteration, anaphora, metonymy, metaphor, and personification. In lines 53 to 56, he uses metaphor to compare common dead village people with the gems and flowers. In lines 71 to 72, he compares flattering words to incense. In lines 29 to 32, Gray personified ambition and grandeur. In lines 49-50, knowledge is personified, and in lines 119 to 120, science and melancholy are personified. Summary of Elegy Written in a Country Churchyard. Stanza 1 to 4, lines 1 to 16. The curfew tolls the knell of parting day, the lowering herd winds slowly over the lea. The ploughman homeward plods his weary way and leaves the world to darkness and to me. Now fades the glimmering landscape on the side, and all the air a solemn stillness holds, save where the beetle wheels his droning flight and drowsy tinkling lull the distant clouds. Save that from yonder ivy-mantled tower the mopping owl does to the moon complain of such as wandering near her secret power, molest her ancient solitary reign. Beneath those rugged elms that yew trees shade, where heaves the turf in many a mouldering heap, each in his narrow cell forever laid, the rude forefathers of the hamlet sleep. The poet begins by explaining the surroundings in a village during an evening in 1750 when English towns had a curfew. The time when a bell was rung in the evening that signaled people to put out their fires and go to bed. It is the time when cattle herds are turning back home and the tired farmers are returning from their fields. All is quiet and everything is still. Only the beetle buzzes and the owl hoots. It appears as if the owl is the ruler inspecting her reign. Among a group of elm trees, there is the graveyard. There are burials of the villagers, ancestors in the graveyard, and the omniscient speaker is standing there in the graveyard. Throughout the poem, the word save is used to mean accept. Stanza 5 to 8, lines 17 to 32. The breezy call of incense-breathing morn, the swallow twittering from the straw-built shed, the cock's shrill clarion or the echoing horn, no more shall rouse them from their lowly bed. For them no more the blazing hearth shall burn, or busy housewife ply her evening care, no children run to lisp their sire's return, or climb his knees the envied kiss to share. Oft did the harvest to their sickle yield, their furrow oft the stubborn glebe has broke. How jocund did they drive their team afield, how bowed the woods beneath their sturdy stroke. Let not ambition mock their useful toil, their homely joys and destiny obscure, nor grandeur hear with a disdainful smile the short and simple annals of the poor. The poet, who is standing in the graveyard, begins to discuss the people who have been buried there. They are sleeping in beds that are low to the ground. No sound can wake them up. The twittering of the swallow, the morning call of the cock, even the horn cannot wake them. Their wives and their children, nobody cares for them anymore. They were hard-working men when they were alive. Their ploughing, their harvesting, and their farming were all efficient. The speaker asks not to look down upon their simple life and hard work. Ambitious people think of village life as simple, but the villagers had their joy and sorrow much like others. Stanza 9 to 12, lines 33 to 48. The boast of harlot dry, the pomp of power, and all that beauty, all that wealth ever gave, awaits alike the inevitable hour, the paths of glory led but to the grave. Nor you, ye proud, impute to these the fault, if memory over their tomb no trophies raise, where through the long-drawn aisle and fretted vault the pealing anthem swells the note of praise. Can storied urn or animated bust back to its mansion call the fleeting breath? Can honor's voice provoke the silent dust of flattery soothe the dull, cold ear of death? Perhaps in this neglected spot is laid some heart once pregnant with celestial fire, hands that the rod of empire might have swayed, or wake to ecstasy the living lyre. The omniscient speaker continues to appreciate the common dead villagers and says that the poor are not inferior to the rich in death. Invariably, every human life ends in death. The beauty, the wealth, and the glory all lead to the unavoidable end. The villager's grave does not have the grandiousness of ceremonies and tombstones, but none of that can bring a person back to life. So there is no use for them. One should remember that no one knew that one of the dead villagers may have achieved greatness. Therefore, there may be a ruler or a poet buried in there. Stanza 13 to 16, lines 49 to 64. But knowledge to their eyes, her ample page, rich with the spoils of time, did never unroll, till penury repressed their noble rage and froze the genial current of the soul. Full many a gem of purest ray serene, the dark unfathomed caves of ocean bear. Full many a flower is born to blush unseen and waste its sweetness on the desert air. Some village Hampden that with dauntless breast the little tyrant of his field withstood. Some mute inglorious Milton here may rest, some Cromwell guiltless of his country's blood. The applause of listening senates to command, the threats of pain and ruin to despise, to scatter plenty over a smiling land, and read their history in a nation's eyes. In these stanzas, the poet continues to support the common man and remarks that the villagers who were dead would also have talent. There might be a Milton or a Cromwell buried there. They did not get opportunities to prove themselves. Like gems hidden deep under the ocean and like desert flowers, they have perished without notice. Given opportunities, they would have also succeeded. People would have read their deeds in history. Stanza 17 to 20, lines 65 to 80. Their lot forbade, nor circumscribed alone, their growing virtues but their crimes confined, forbade to wade through slaughter to a throne, and shut the gates of mercy on mankind, the struggling pangs of conscious truth to hide, to quench the blushes of ingenious shame, or heap the shrine of luxury and pride with incense kindled at the muse's flame. Far from the madding crowds in ignoble strife, their sober wishes never learned to stray along the cool sequestered vale of life. They kept the noiseless tenor of their way, yet even these bones from insult to protect, some frail memorial still erected nigh. With uncouth rhymes and shapeless sculpture decked, implores the passing tribute of a sigh. In these stanzas, the poet exclaims the innocence and straightforwardness of the common villagers. The omniscient speaker says that the villagers did not wish to be involved in treachery and deceit. They were honest people and wished to lead simple lives, so they kept themselves away from the mad crowd of the cities and kingdoms. They were true to themselves. They liked peace and honesty, but still there were markings to note their memory. The tombstones were simple, the language was ordinary, but there is truth in their memory. Stanza 21 to 24, lines 81 to 96. There named their ears, spelled by the unlettered muse, the place of fame and elegy supply, and many a holy text around these truths, that teach the rustic moralist to die. For who to dumb forgetfulness a prey, displeasing anxious being ever resigned, left the warm precincts of the cheerful day, nor cast one longing, lingering look behind. On some fond breast the parting soul relies, some pious drops the closing eye requires. Even from the tomb the voice of nature cries, even in our ashes live their vaunted fires. For thee, who mindful of the unhonored dead, dost in these lines their artless tale relate. If chance, by lonely contemplation led, some kindred spirit shall inquire thy fate. The poet laments that the dead villagers rest in the graveyard without recognition. The omniscient speaker is happy to declare that this poem will be a tribute to them. They lived their lives with morals, they died in the care of a loving person, and they closed their eyes with prayers in one's eyes. One day a kind soul may come and inquire after the dead, one out of curiosity. Stanza 25 to 28, lines 97 to 112. Happily, some hoary-headed swain may say, oft have we seen him at the peep of dawn, brushing with hasty steps the dews away, to meet the sun upon the upland lawn. There at the foot of yonder nodding beech, that wrath its old fantastic roots so high, his listless length at noontide would be stretched, and pour upon the brook that babbles by. Hard by yon wood, now smiling as in scorn, muttering his wayward fancies he would rove, now dropping woeful man like one forlorn, or crazed with care, or crossed in hopeless love. One morn I missed him on the customed hill, along the heath and near his favourite tree. Another came, nor yet beside the rill, nor up the lawn, nor at the wood was he. In these stanzas, the poet suggests as if he is also dead and dwelling in the graveyard among the other dead villagers. If someone asks about the poet who rests in the graveyard, one of the villagers may talk about him. A free-spirited man was the poet. He went to the mountains in the morning and stood under the beech tree sometimes. Then he went to the brook. Besides, he was sometimes muttering his fancies. The villager would say that he missed seeing the man one day. The poet was missing. The villager did not see him in his usual places, but he saw the funeral procession and how the man was buried in the graveyard. Stanza 29 to 32, lines 113 to 128. The next with dirges due in sad array, slow through the churchway path we saw him borne, approach and read, for thou canst read the lay, graved on the stone beneath your aged thorn. The epitaph. Here rests his head upon the lap of earth, a youth to fortune and to fame unknown. Fair signs frowned not on his humble birth, and melancholy marked him for her own. Large was his bounty, and his soul sincere. Heaven did a recompense as largely send. He gave to misery all he had, a tear. He gained from heaven, it was all he wished, a friend. No farther seek his merits to disclose, or draw his frailties from their dread abode. There they alike in trembling hope repose, the bosom of his Father and his God. The poet suggests that the epitaph of the poet buried in the graveyard would say, "Here lies the young man who was not popular. His life was full of sorrow, knowledge was his only wealth. He gave his life to misery, and all he longed was for a friend to support him. One need not look away to know about him. All that he did lies with him, close to God in the lap of earth." Themes of Elegy Written in a Country Churchyard. The main theme of the poem is the inevitability of death, which is a universal truth. Irrespective of a person's social status, political power, wealth, or fame, everyone is a subject of death, and death doesn't discriminate. Even the omniscient speaker of the poem is a subject of death. Since it is an elegy, the poem laments the death of everyone who died and was buried in the country churchyard, and it is also a sorrowful note for those who will die and will be buried in that churchyard, including the poet himself. In fact, the poem can be taken as an elegy for every death in the past and in the future anywhere in the world, and thus the poem establishes the sense of looming inescapable mortality. The other important theme of the poem is the importance of commemorating the dead. The poem suggests that memorizing the dead helps the living in accepting the inevitability of death. The poet further asserts that fame is not a virtue. He focuses on all the common people who have died without fame, power, or wealth. In particular, he realizes that many people could have been great and famous if only they had grown up under the right circumstances. Rather than lamenting this fact, however, the speaker suggests that these people led less troubled lives than those in elite society. The speaker rejects wealth, fame, and power and instead celebrates regular people living ordinary lives. Anonymity, the poem suggests, is better for the soul. So this is it for today. We will continue to discuss the history of English literature. Please stay connected with the discourse. Thanks and regards.